So here we are. We are going to cover the session that I just played a few days ago at Maryland Live Casino. This is another great casino to play at. I like to play there. It's just a little bit further of a drive than MGM is. And don't worry, there were a few comments that was asking me about the Bankroll Challenge or why I'm not playing 2-5. The next video, there will be some 2-5 footage, I promise you. Don't worry, we are playing 2-5. The only problem is a lot of times when I go to these casinos, it'll be 1-3 open seat, 2-5. It'll be like 3 tables and like 20 people in line. So essentially, it's going to be like an hour wait, hour and a half wait before I get on a 2-5 when I can jump right to a 1-3. And I've gotten pretty lucky at getting into some pretty splashy 1-3 tables. So if I'm at a great 1-3 table, there's really no need to go on to a 2-5 table that I don't know how good it's going to be. So that's the only reason. But for the vlog's sake, I will start jumping into these 2-5 games. I'll call ahead, get in the list, and that way as soon as I get there, I'm next in line. So anyways, to get that said, I want to say thank you to everybody once again for getting me to the 1K. Go back to the last video and comment on a hand and type in MB, and that will give you an entry into the cash giveaway. There will be 5 winners, and I will be picking them at the end of this month. So let's just get right to the hands. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new, and let's get right to this hands and see if we can turn up another profit. Okay, so this first hand I didn't think nothing of it, so I started recording late. But we have 8-9 of diamonds, and we check our option in the big blind, and we are off to a flop, which comes ace, 8, 9. So because of this, I decided to bet 10. I'm trying to get called by any ace, and then on the turn, I'm probably going to put out a really, really big bet to target those aces, because a lot of times people that have top pair don't want to fold. So that was the plan. But then when I get one call, the turn is the most beautiful card in 8. So we now fill up with a full house. So now I decided to bet small now because my hand's not vulnerable. So I bet out for 15 and then I get raised by 40. There is a couple draws out there that maybe he's trying to steal it. And also he could just have an ace and think that my small bet means nothing. So I'm just going to call the 40 and that's it. And oh, do y'all remember me saying that my hand's not vulnerable? Well, what would be the worst card to see on the river? Yeah, that's right. It is an ace on the river, so now any ace does have us beat. So now I check, and I'm just praying that he checks back, because seeing a big bet on the river would just be disgusting. And luckily, he checks it back, and I say I have a full house. And of course, if he checks in this situation, my hand is good, and I was glad to avoid disaster. So first hand is a small little win, but let's take the momentum and go to the next hand. So moving right along, we now have a premium ace king of clubs, which is my favorite suit. So I decided to raise it up to 15 from the low jack, the cutoff in the button call. So we're going 3 ways, which is not bad in live poker. We're going 3 ways to a flop, which is king 10 deuce with 2 diamonds. So with all of my hands, I would be betting this board. So I decided to bet 15. That's 1/3 pot sizing. Now, seeing that there's a double Broadway cards and there's also a diamond flush draw, I could be betting a lot larger, but this time I decided to go with 1/3. So the cutoff calls, the button folds. So now we're off to a turn, which is an offsuit 3. So on this card, I want to size up a little bit more, price out those draws. Of course, he could just be calling down with a queen, but I bet for 40 this time, and once again, he calls. So now the river is an interesting card. It is the king of diamonds, so it does complete the flush, and it does complete a draw like Jack 9. But back when I first started playing poker, this would be a spot I would just check and hoping it goes check, check, but I think that I have the best hand here, so I'm going to put out a small bet of 50 into a pot of 155. So my plan is if he raises, I know he has a better hand, but I really think he was calling down with a king, with the queen, I'm sorry. And so I bet out for 50. He thinks about it for a second. He doesn't like the spot. He's thinking about folding, but I think he thought that the price was so good, so he decides to put in the call. I show my ace king, and it is good. So sometimes you got to go for those thin value bets. Of course, sometimes you're going to run into a better hand, but if you're not valuing yourself from time to time, then that means you're not betting enough on the river when you're good. So anyways, we win the hand, and now we're off to the next one. Let's see if we can keep this one going. Right now, we are 2 for 2. So moving right along, we have ace jack under the gun. We raise it up to 15. We get 2 callers, so of course we're going 3 ways to a flop. it comes 779 with 2 diamonds. So I bet $15. One player folds and the other one decides to call. So now the turn is an 8. And when I check, he decides to bet out for 30. I'm looking at his stack. He only has 40 behind, so there's no chance I'm going to get him to fold. So in this hand, I just chalk it up to a loss, and now we are 2 for 1, but it's okay. Just want to say, do you think I should have put one more bet and put them all in on the turn, or do you think that just the check giver was the right line, seeing as that we did go multi-way to a flop? Let me know in the comments. Okay, so this hand is very interesting. We're going to talk about pot odds a little bit. So we are under the gun. We raised to 15 with queen 10 of diamonds. The cutoff calls, small blind calls, and the big blind calls. So we are going 4 ways to a flop, which comes 8, 6, 3 with 1 diamond. So don't really got nothing here, but I'm just going to go ahead and bet out for 25. The cutoff calls and the big blind calls. So now the turn is a 7 of diamond. I don't want to barrel here because now that I turned so much equity, I don't want to get blasted off of it. They could have all of the 2-pair combinations and sets, etc. And so I decide to check, and now the cutoff decides to bet 65. The big blind decides to call as well, and he has 60. So now at this point, the pot is 260. So this is where the pot odds come in. I have to call $65 to win a pot that will be 325 once I call. So the math on that is roughly 20% is the equity I need to be profitable. And seeing as that I have 12 outs, seeing as that 9 diamonds and 3 nines will make me be pretty sure that I have the best hand. I don't want to include the queen and my 10 is out. So I have 12 outs in my mind. So that's about 25% equity against the hand that I'm seeing is 2-pair, a set, or something along those lines. So now if I also include the implied odds, meaning that let's say I hit my card, my flush card, or my straight. The flush I know I'm going to get paid off because it's a backdoor. And if he has a set or 2-pair, he's not going to believe that I have a better hand than him when fold. So I can lead the river for, let's say, 100. That means that with implied odds, it's $65 to win a pot of 525. So obviously, with all of that math, I decided to go ahead and call. So now we're off to a river, which is a red card, but unfortunately it is not a diamond. But it is a 9, and so we make our straight. And I didn't quite know what sizing. I should have probably blasted it if I think he had that strong of a hand. But I just bet out for 100, and he quickly just says that he has a set, so he can't fold. And he does snap it off. So I show him that I have queen 10 of diamonds. He didn't really like it, but who would? But once again, we hit a very big pot. So this one was the biggest pot of the night, and I was very happy with this one. Let me know if you like it when I do like these math equations. Let me know if it made sense to y'all. If not, then I won't do them in the future. But that's just some things you got to think about if you're trying to play poker on the next level. So moving along, we have another interesting hand. We have 2 red 8s. And we are in the small blind, under the gun limps, and when it gets to the cutoff, he raises to 15. The button decides to call, and I normally don't like calling out of the small blind, but at the end of the day, I can just play no set, no bet, and the game hasn't been very aggressive, so I know that the under the gun is not going to go for the limp raise. So I just go ahead and stick in the call, and we are off to the flop, which comes 9 for a deuce with 2 spades. So when I check, it checks all the way around to the preflop raiser, and he decides to check, and now the button decides to check as well. So moving along to the turn, it is a 7 of spades. So now, seeing as that everyone checked around, I know that nobody probably had a flush draw. At least I know the cutoff and the button don't have a flush draw, because more than likely if it checked to them, they would bet. So only person that might have the flush would be under the gun. So I decided to lead out for $25, and everyone folds but the button. Now, the river is a queen of clubs, so it's another overcard to my pocket pair of 8s. So when I check, he decides to bet 50, and I really do ponder. Obviously, you don't like seeing the queen, but it's like, what queen is he really going to have? So it didn't really make sense, and I know he doesn't have a flush, because if he had a flush on the turn when I bet 25, he would at least thought a little bit longer about if he should raise now or wait till the river. So I'm not buying he has a flush, and I don't see what hand would really connect with this queen that much that would make him bet. If he had like a hand like 9-10, he wouldn't bet right here. So it didn't make sense to me. And when things don't make sense, I just go ahead and stick in the call.
And when I call, all he says is "you're good." I don't know what he had. I didn't make him show. I'm not really in the business of making people show their hands when they say that I'm good. Somebody else at the table is like, "Oh, like you paid for it, you should have waited and made him show his hand." But like at the end of the day, I don't need the information, and I think people vastly overestimate how much information they're going to get from seeing one hand that somebody played. So I just move on. I take the pot, and we're moving on to the next hand. So this hand is a hand I would actually like to get your feedback on. So we have pocket sevens under the gun, and I decided to raise to 15. The plus one and the button decided to call. So we are three ways to a flop, which comes ace, king, eight. Obviously, this just destroys my range. I could have all the aces, all the kings, all the ace kings, even pocket eights for that matter. So I decided to bet out for 20, and only the button decides to call. Now the turn is a three, and seeing as that it wasn't a flush draw board, he's probably calling down with an ace. See, the problem is, I feel like as poker players, when we do the range betting, you gotta understand that a lot of our opponents are gonna be comprised of having any suited aces in their calling range. So you don't want to just keep on blasting just because you see an ace on the board. So I decided to check, and it actually checks around. So now the turn is a three. And now I really do want to put out a bet, but this player, he seems competent, and I don't think that he would think that I would check the turn if I had a good ace. So I just check back. He decides to put out a bet of 30, and I fold. Do you think that it was a good check give up on the turn, or do you think I should have applied more pressure? And what do you think I should have did on the river if I applied a turn barrel and he called? But anyways, leave the comments there. I will get back to you as always. And here is one hand that we're gonna have to do from the house.
Okay, so for the final hand of the vlog, I'm up about $500 at this point, so I'm not going to lock it up. I'm always trying to keep on playing aggressive, but I have ace queen and I am in middle position. There's an under the gun raise to 10 and then an immediate call right to his left for 10. So now when it gets to me, I decide what bet sizing should I choose. And seeing as that we have a raise and a call, I'm going to raise this up a little bit larger. So I've raised this up to 60. That way nobody in between is going to call. Like if I make it 40, somebody might want to call with some random two cards. So I make it 60 and it gets back to the pre-flop raiser and he decides to call. And weirdly enough, the player on his left, the same player who had the set, he flips a Maryland Live chip, which I'm pretty sure the heads and tails are the same, and he catches it like it's a coin and says, "All right, I call." Okay. Anyways, though, we're off to a flop, which comes 10, 7, 3 with two clubs. So pretty good flop. A lot of the ace kings and ace queens miss. My hand missed, but they don't know. I could have aces, I could have kings. So in my mind, the most person realistically that's going to have like let's say pocket jacks or pocket queens is going to be the pre-flop raiser who raised under the gun. So I put out a bet of 75. The pot has 180, so 75 into 180 is about 40% pot or so. And I get my wish, and the pre-flop raiser decides to fold. But unfortunately, the player to the left actually decides to re-raise. So he raises it up to 250. And with 250, I actually still think I'm probably ahead here. But obviously, with only having two overcards, no backdoor equity really, I unfortunately have to make the fold. And when I fold, he shows that he had 8-6 of clubs. So he had a flush draw along with a gutter ball to the straight. So equity wise against my exact hand, he was for sure dominating. But even if I had pocket aces, it was pretty much a flip. So that hand kind of sucked. And it just shows you like just like that, we lost $140 just like that. And then after that, I had a few other hands where I called raises and then they bricked out, or I raised, four people called, the board doesn't cooperate with me, and I got to give it up. So what I was really proud of myself is when I became upstuck, being that I was up about 500 at my highest, and then I got as low as only being up about 250. This is normally where I've done very destructive things, and I've lost thousands of dollars just starting to go from VPIPing 15 to 20% to all of a sudden now I'm like 45%, just going crazy. And I've lost so much money doing this, and I could feel after a while that like there was like this rage building up inside of me. And at that point, I decided to leave. And that's a lot of growth in my poker career because it's been a lot of times I've stayed overnight and just started punting off. So if you're ever feeling like you are out of your element, you don't feel in control of your emotions, or you're just in a terrible mood, it's okay to just leave and come back another day. You know, we're playing the long game if we're going to be like a professional, semi-pro, or if it's just like a major hobby that you have. I mean, it's still going to be another session, another session. So don't try to be in a bad space and do something that you know is going to be bad for your bankroll just because you're upset in the moment. Just leave, come back when you're feeling good, and then start the doom day fresh, and you'll be okay. So let's go to the outro. I'll talk about all of the final results and see what we did. So after we decided to leave and cash out, we were into the game for 300, out of the game for 535. So that is a profit of 235. Obviously, that's not our high point of being a 500, but a profit is a profit is a profit. We only played for roughly 3 hours, so to win about $80 an hour, obviously it's still a good night. So that is the results. Once again, thank you for everyone that's been watching my videos lately. I need everyone to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember to go back to the last video and drop a comment on a hand and then put an MB on the last video I just put up, and that will give you a entry into the giveaway. There will be 5 winners. It's going to be a cash prize just for say thank you for getting me to 1K. So y'all go do that, and until the next video, holla.